And I became obsessed with this because a few years later, I started a company, and I wanted to know, how can we make breakthroughs? How can we do what other people have not done? How can we succeed where others have failed? How can we change the game we're trying to play? And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole of history and psychology, ended up writing this book a few years ago called Smart Cuts, which is about that. And when you think about this puzzle of the old woman in the rainstorm, the solution the most elegant solution that we could come up with, in this scenario at least so far, didn't work unless you got out of the car. So that's what I wrote about, is this idea, and you know, people have been saying get out of outside the box for years, but getting out of the car and looking at the problem with a fresh perspective was how you solved it. And the next book that I wrote that's coming out this June is about the other side of that, is this solution did not work without the help of your friend also participating in solving this problem. So that's what this book is about, and I think that Columbia got copies for a bunch of people who registered early or something like that, which is awesome. But this book is about breakthroughs in history and how people came together. And the reason I think is relevant to talk about with this crowd is anything that you're planning on building or working on is not going to work. It's not going to be as ambitious as you anticipate unless you build the right team around it, unless you work together in the right way. And I want to start by talking about the first thing, which sucks, which is that two heads are usually not actually better than one. Research shows this over and over again, that even though the reason that we, the human species, survived was by banding together, and even though we're built for collaboration, we can make vocal sounds that animals cannot. The whites of our eyes are 3 times the size of those of other primates, so we can see what each other are doing. It helps us build things and collaborate better. And yes, this is a hipster next to a gorilla. Our brains are built for empathy, so that we can imitate each other's emotions, so that we feel motivated to help each other out. And this is how we banded together, and this is how we built civilizations. It's how we survived against the saber-toothed tiger. And yet, studies show that when you're in a group of people, and you're asked to shout as loud as you can, you will shout 74% as loud as you will on your own when it's just you in front of the judges. You put people in the tug-of-war, and once you're in a group, you pull less hard in the tug-of-war. And the bigger the group, the less hard you pull, even if you're like this kid and you think you're pulling your hardest. Some of this is social loafing. Some of this is simply lost productivity because coordinating the tug-of-war is hard. But a lot of this is just psychological that we don't even realize we're doing. And then this is my favorite one. I'll explain this one through a photo series from Shutterstock that I like to call White Guy Leads Brainstorm Session, which studies repeatedly show that when you put groups of people together for brainstorming sessions, that they come up with fewer ideas and fewer quality ideas than people come up with on their own. So if you give someone an hour to think about ideas for something, they will come up with better ideas than if you put them in a group of people to come up with them together. And in fact, the bigger the group, the worse this problem. To the point that a famous psychologist once said that business people must be insane to use brainstorming exercises. Another one said, as sure as cigarettes cause cancer, brainstorming in groups does not work. So that sucks. And also the thing that happens when we come together to work on things, we bring our different ideas to the table, and we often end up fighting each other. I don't know how many of you have worked in big companies, but the amount of politics that you see, even in a company like mine with 100 people, is outrageous. And politics often devolves into shouting matches, finger pointing, and gets personal. This is just what happens when humans come together, even to the point that we try to take each other out sometimes. So the reality is, though, that anything big we ever built required a lot of people. Any innovation that ever happened because people built off of each other's work. They stood on the shoulders of giants. You can't do a heart surgery with just one person, and many jobs are simply too big for one person to handle. So we have this great paradox. So we endure this lost productivity that comes with group work, and we endure the squabbles and the enemies that we create from our different perspectives. We endure the jerks and the haters and the social loafers and who will do anything to see things their way at any cost. We avoid the ideas that are inconvenient that we don't want around. We put up walls so that we can put our critics on the floor. We beat our plowshares into swords, and we turn nuclear energy into a bomb. And this is what happens when humans come together, which again sucks.